Anyone who's ever done anything worth doing has dreamed big, failed mightily, and mostly started from humble beginnings. This is a podcast about such people. The most fascinating podcast in the world is fascinating because of the stories of the human beings. Hello, everybody. It's Pat DeCerbo, the most fascinating podcast in the world, which has nothing to do with me and everything to do with the folks that agree to speak to me. And today we have, without question, one of the most fascinating people that I have ever known of. I do not know him well, but I have lots of friends that know him well, so I feel like I know him. His name is Dan Gable, and he is a well-known American wrestler, coach, motivator, and leader in the sport of wrestling. And Dan is here with us today. And Dan, I'm very grateful. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, I love things that promote the sport of wrestling and promote good things, and that's why I'm on here.
Terrific. I'm glad you agreed to do it. So I'm in the habit of asking folks, Dan, would you prefer I call you Dan or Coach?
I don't care, but you. What's more normal for you?
All righty. Since you didn't coach me, I'm going to call you Dan.
Okay.
What are your earliest memories, Dan, from when you were a little kid, like a 3, 4, 5-year-old child?
I have early memories. I really do, and it seems like my long-term memory is actually better than my short-term memory at my age right now. But I can probably remember as far back, as things happening off and on at 2 years old. And that's pretty amazing. And the reason why is because, I don't remember things before that, but it was the first time my family had made a move that was probably a big move. By that, I'm saying city people to farm people. And so the memories are short. I just remember living in a different kind of atmosphere. I just remember, and again, some of this comes from not only my memory, but my mom and dad telling me. And so I have those memories. And so they're kind of blurred together. But so about the first memory I can think of is all of a sudden, when I'm 2 years old, we moved from the city of Waterloo, Iowa, to the country of no city, no town. I mean, they're close by. Reedland, Iowa. From Waterloo, Iowa to Reedland, Iowa, and from a house that had running plumbing in the city to a house that didn't. And so I remember, and this is, Iowa's cold in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember being cold when you have to leave the house to go to the outdoor toilet.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember that, and again, this is mostly told through your parents, but your mom, that all of a sudden I don't know what you call it, when you go from diapers to underpants, but I had already made that move, but now I had to go back to diapers. I guess it was maybe 0 degrees out or 10 degrees or snowing, and it wasn't fun to actually leave the house. It wasn't fun. It was cold. And so, that's some of the early memories that you have with your life, but it's a change. I mean, you're already well on your way, and then you got to go backwards. And the funny thing about it is my dad, who was, he was in the transport business, trucking business. and he kind of owned his own business at a fairly young age. And he had sold that to a bigger company, and he made some good money early on. So he all of a sudden he had this money, and he decided that now I want to try something different. And my his wife, uh, you know, my mom, was a kind of a farm girl, and her brother was living on a farm. So my dad thought the next best thing was to getting out of a business was move to a farm. And so uh, he had that money, and it was probably a decent amount of money. They sold his business. I mean, you're talking a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So a decent amount of money back then would not be a decent amount of money now. But it bought him a farm with, 50, 60, 70 acres. And but he knew nothing about farming, but he did have his uh, wife's brother to help him a little bit, but he already had his farm. So my dad's name was Mac, was kind of on his own. And so things didn't work out for him. It didn't work out for me because I was already housebroken. And then all of a sudden I became a bedwetter, and it was cold, and I can remember that and things. But all of a sudden my dad, we were along a river, and all the crops that were put in flooded. He lost his crops. And from that, somehow the animals, the cows and the pigs that you would have, not probably too many, but they caught this disease and they all died. And so we had nothing. We had no crops, no farm animals. And so basically all the money from his trucking sell, and he had made a pretty good amount of money at that time, he lost just about everything. So he moved back to town, moved back to Waterloo, and he studied to be a realtor, and that's what he was the rest of his life. And so that memory early on is pretty good. But when he moved back into town again, we went from no money to had a little bit of money, and then we lost all the money, and then we moved in. So we moved back into a house that didn't have a lot of heat, and had some, but it was okay. And he took up real estate business, and he became a realtor, and a successful realtor for the rest of his life. But so now I'm probably 3, and I'm getting old enough to maybe need some help a little bit at home. I was getting a little trouble, a little kind of a rambunctious guy, and he wants me to go to the YMCA to obviously learn how to swim, because you need to know how to swim. Everybody needs to know how to swim.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you don't know how to swim, you're going to drown probably, and, depending on where you live, and it depends on whether it floods, or depends on whether it rains hard, or if nobody's attending you in a bathtub, that type of thing. So, that's one of the life skills that you learn. So he sent me to the YMCA at 4 years old. I actually started school at 4 years old, and I went to the YMCA at 4 years old. And one of the best things that ever happened to me between the ages of 4 to 12, spent a lot of days at the YMCA. And I was a kid that was getting in trouble a little bit. I got spanked quite a bit. Back in those days, people don't realize, if, the ones that are of age realize, but, they could take, parents could take, they could beat you up a little bit. They could spank you. They could yell at you. You know, it's just one of those things. Now, that was your kids. I mean, they did. I mean, I'm talking about, they didn't brutalize me. I mean, they just gave. At that time, you could get spankings, and now beyond that, other things could happen. And so I remember also as kids that my mom and dad weren't exactly, and usually it was alcohol related, that they would get into arguments and fights. And I had a sister that was 4 years older than me, and had quite a few knocks on the door, and when you answered the door, it was because the neighbors had called the police to come over and smooth things down, or my mom had called the police to smooth things down, and so uh, it was I didn't know that it wasn't common. I mean, in Waterloo, Iowa, maybe it was fairly common. We had a crazy town at that time. You had a lot of you had John Deere, you had a lot of factories and raft packing company, and you had a lot of people that were hardworking people that usually when they left work, they probably went and drank beer and then came home. And that doesn't, that combination doesn't work really well if you have kids and a mom at home. And so there was usually a lot of fighting and arguing going on a little bit, but they went for help for me, and they did well. They knew that this kid needed something, and the YMCA was exactly what I needed. The Young Men's Christian Association. There was a YMCA in my town too. My sister never went to that, but they had me in Boy Scouts. Or I should say Cub Scouts, and they had me at the YMCA. And my dad had some friends that were wrestlers and good friends. And once he got situated into his real estate and he started making some good money, he started his own business. Eventually, he turned that business into a home office and so on and so forth. But I would say that they took pretty darn good care of this kid
Mm-hmm.
and the daughter Diane until we had a tragedy in our life. And uh, even though it was pretty normal for me to hear people yelling at each other, my mom was pretty tough. She if she got pushed around a little bit between the alcohol and the arguments, my dad had to take a few trips to the hospital. She was flinging probably beer bottles, but whatever was there that she's mad, and she would hit him in the head or something like that. So it was a pretty I don't know if it's typical, but didn't seem really abnormal for me because a lot of families were hardworking Iowans and Waterloo, and then they not celebrate, but they didn't come home right after work and that type of thing. So, I didn't know any difference. And I think my dad was smart enough to teach me how to swim so I wouldn't drown. And then all of a sudden at the Y, I got a job early on, and I was making 35 cents an hour, I believe, my first job. Uh, and that was probably, by that time, I was probably 9, 10 years old.
Were
And
you
so,
wrestling by that time or no?
oh yeah, my dad was a wrestler, but
Mm-hmm.
not a good one. Uh, but my dad's friends were really good wrestlers. Uh, the dad was, and then his sons were really good. Their names were Buzzard, actually, and
Buzzard?
Buzzard, Don Buzzard Senior, and then he had a Bob Buzzard, and then he had a Don Junior, and those kids went to the opposite school in town. I ended up being in the Waterloo west side of town. They were in the Waterloo east side of town, and and uh, my dad was involved with other activities like hunting and fishing, and the Buzzards had a cabin up not too far away, and they did a lot of hunting, and we spent time there. And I spent time up in northeast Iowa with a family with boating and fishing and things like that. So we had a lot of family time together. But I would say that the guys, the Buzzard boys, taught me how to wrestle.
Mm. So how old were you when you started to wrestle?
Well, do you want to hear a story or not?
Sure. I
Yeah.
love stories.
Well, let me think here. Uh, my mom came home from the hospital with a little baby. It was me. So however long they stayed in the hospital back in the days, couldn't be, a week or 2 days or 3 days. And when I came home to the house, it was this house was not, it was a little chilly. We didn't have great heat in the house, I guess. And so she put me in my crib, and she put me in that crib, and they went to bed, and all of a sudden they heard me crying. So they let you cry, but after a little while they go in. If you don't settle down, they come in. And my mom came in, and she said uh, she said that she put me to bed earlier, and she put me to bed on my back, which is pretty normal. Put a cover on me, and she came in when I was crying. She said I had flipped off my back and I was on my belly, and I should have been happy because I got off my back. But she said that I was crying, and so I go, if I asked my mom when I started, that's right when I started. She said I did not like being on my back,
That's
and
great.
so and here's the thing. You could use confidence in your life, but the longer you do something, if you do it, chances are you do it better. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, when people ask me that question, and because I've had a lot of success in the sport of wrestling my whole life, I say day one of my life, I started wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
My answer is why? I mean, how do you know that? And I say, my mom told me.
Yeah.
My mom told me. And who doesn't believe their mom? And I say that line quite a bit, and I think that's a good credit to mothers, but I think it's a good credit to my confidence
Mm.
that I got it on a lot. I don't know how many people started when they were 1 year or first
Zero.
first day or third day out of the hospital. So that give me
We're
the edge.
we're
I
going with age zero.
pardon
We're going with age zero. That's
8-0.
when you started.
Well,
um, so then you were in wrestling tournaments as early as
kids in my era, there wasn't. You didn't start in tournaments.
okay,
You started in school,
okay,
and usually you start in seventh grade. Junior
okay,
high was seventh, eighth, and ninth grade. Then
okay.
high school was 10th, 11th, and 12th. So seventh grade was when I first started competition. However, because of the Buzzards, they would take me to their practices at East Waterloo, and then at the YMCA they had a small wrestling room. I think the coach was Larry Mosier, and uh, he you'd have a class that when you were young, so probably 4 years old, had the first instructional class. I really didn't have any competition until seventh grade, but there was wrestling matches going on my front room floor with me and my friends, or actually my sisters, who was 4 years older than me. A lot of her friends were wrestlers, and they would actually have wrestling matches right on in the yard, on the front room floor, depending on what time of the year it is. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so, it's something was always going on. But the main reason why is because Waterloo was a wrestling town.
Mm.
East Waterloo, West Waterloo, both had championship performances all the time. Kids were winning state championships. Teams were winning state championships with Coach Siddons from West Waterloo, Coach Natvig from East Waterloo. So um, there was a lot of history. And the University of Northern Iowa, which was called State Teachers College back in those days, and now they're ranked fourth in the country this year. And they have a coach named Doug Schwab. And Doug Schwab is one of my guys, or I should say, Coach Zaleski's guys,
Mm.
right after I stepped down, but I was still there with him. But, you know, they, we have so much history in my hometown and Cedar Falls, Iowa. And actually, Cedar Falls is right now with a kid named Coach Doug Schwab. They're fourth in the country.
Mm.
Uh, the University of Iowa's number 2 in the country right now. I mean, we don't like to say that because we like number 1, And actually, the UNI now has changed from State Teachers College to the University of Northern Iowa. They actually won a Division I national title back in the 50s. And,
Mm.
uh, and they were always really good too. So the history is there. And when you have the history there, you're going to have championship performances in that particular activity, which happens to be wrestling, which
Mm.
it's not as great right now. So in fact, I don't, I think maybe girls basketball might be one of the leaders at Waterloo, Iowa right now. And just like at the University of Iowa with Caitlin
Mm-hmm.
Clark, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of emphasis, but still the state of Iowa is unbelievable with wrestling. I
No
mean,
doubt.
it's just, if you take that away from us, then you've taken history away from us. And
Mm.
if you want to have good history in the future, you won't take that away from us because there's no other sport that has had the success in the state of Iowa like wrestling. It's well over 100 years. They just had their state tournament again. And and now with females involved, we have two state tournaments and we are kind of still helping lead the nation, even though Pennsylvania's kind of taken over the college Division I with Cale Sanderson from Iowa State, Dan Gable, Iowa State, and they're still good,
Who
but they're
who's Cale
not as good as they
Sanderson?
used to be.
Who's Cale Sanderson?
Whoa, you're just kidding me.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah, my God, don't do that because you know what that means? If you would have asked me that and meant it real, I would have said, "Wow, we do have a long ways to go." I mean, when you got an Olympic champion, Iowa State 4-time national champion, undefeated, high school undefeated in college.
Mm.
He's dominating right now. He's in that position that everybody's thinking they're automatics. Well, this would be the year to win if you're not
Mm.
Penn State. I mean, if you beat Penn State this year, people were going to remember it forever
No
because they
doubt.
are so ahead of everybody right now.
They are.
So
It's
that's my
incredible.
goal to be. If I
I mean,
was
it's inspiring. It's not unlike what you did.
well, could be inspiring if somebody stepped up to beat them.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the way I look at it, and that doesn't mean it has to happen. But even catching that, because what you need a rivalry there. And
Mm-hmm.
even though I could say, well, I loved it when nobody was close to us, but I can't remember too many people not being close to us for some reason.
Mm.
Even though we end up winning by a lot of points, I always had that motivation that somebody was trying to catch me.
Mm-hmm.
And with that in mind, you're going to work every day, working hard and trying to stay ahead of everybody and making sure that your team is ready to go. So,
Amen. So, at what point did you feel like you had some skill in wrestling and that it was for you, and that you started winning some tournaments or matches?
oh, I, I was a fighter.
Okay.
Um, by that, I mean, at the Y, I can remember I told you about the wrestling class. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
had a wrestling class that I had a partner and I knew some wrestling before that, just from the buzzards and my parents. And so I was handling the kid that I was wrestling and he basically, I don't think he liked it. So I was outside waiting for my parents at the Y. And all of a sudden he came outside, probably to wait for his parents too. And he tapped me on the shoulder and he just said, Gable, you beat me up there in wrestling. Now we're talking, little kids, 6, 7, I don't know exactly. And he goes, but how? I don't think you could beat me in a fight.
Oh, geez.
I said, wait a minute, no, no, we don't need this. We don't need to fight. I really hadn't been in too many fights, a couple, but probably none right there in the middle of the town. And all of a sudden, he punches me. And wow, so I had to defend myself. So we got into he was a better fighter than he was a wrestler, definitely. Especially when he got that first punch in, knocked me and probably jolted me a little bit. But it didn't take me long to recover and get control of him, use some wrestling skills, hold him down, and then uh, stop. Actually, the story is both our parents will happen to be there to get us. We didn't know that. And they were standing together talking, friendly, and they saw their two kids in a fight, and then they came over and broke it up. That's what happened. They broke it up.
Mm.
Uh, and so it was pretty unique. But I was glad that the parents were able to handle it and that the kids really weren't. So I was a lesson learned there for everybody. But, it's one of those things that if you can't win in the wrestling room, you take it outside to a fight. And then I think I got the best of him there a little bit. But, I'm not going to say I got sucker punched, but I wasn't probably ready for somebody to punch me.
Right.
Especially without boxing gloves on, because
Right.
those boxing gloves, you could get a little bit of a cushion. Not that they don't hurt, but we boxed too at the YMCA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we boxed and wrestled and learned to swim. And then I was a swimmer. My first real competition for the state championships was swimming and I was on the swim team until probably the age of 11 or 12. I think it was at 11 when I won a state YMCA backstroke championship.
Oh my gosh.
And I took fourth in the individual medley. But then when you went to junior high, like I said, that's when sports started. So swimming and wrestling was at the same time. And there was no doubt that I was needed to be a wrestler, even though I was a state champion swimmer. Wrestling was going to be my cup of tea, and I'm glad I chose that. But swimming is a life skill, and it's a great sport. It's in the Olympics. It's one of the top people that watch. People watch the Olympics for that. And then my size, I never did get real big, and I think you probably need to be. Some of the sports you need to be a good sized kid. Doesn't mean you can't make it. And I believe I could have made it, but every stroke, somebody that's a foot taller than me or 6 inches got that much of a reach, and it's probably a disadvantage when you're a little bit shorter.
No doubt. So were you on varsity as a 9th grader or 10th grader?
No, 9th grade in Waterloo in all the big schools in Iowa. At that time, like now it's A, AA, and AAA. At that time, it was Class A and Class B until they, like everything else in the world, Class B. That's derogatory. Consider you get A's and you get B's, or it's just different sizes. So now it's A, AA, and AAA. And that's just appropriate kind of language, which I'm probably not the best at, but I can understand a lot of it, but a lot of it I can't understand either. So it's Class A and AA and AAA in almost all the states across America. If they have more than one class, it's going to be that's that good grade A. Now you get an A plus on your report card.
Right.
So it should be A plus, single A plus, double A plus, triple A plus. But it's just one of these things. You got to flow with the time. I like everybody. I like most things, but some things I shake my heads on, and I just wonder why we spend our time worrying about some of that stuff.
So, what year did you get on the varsity wrestling team?
My first year was a sophomore year. 10th
Okay, got it.
First year I went to high school.
And then you won the state championships as a sophomore, or no?
Well, what else is there? No, yeah, but at those times you didn't really wrestle a lot. I think I was 21 or 22-0 as a sophomore. And so by the time I got out of high school, I was like 64-0. And so I won all 3 years. I moved up a weight every year too. But I started at the lightest weight. And so I really was a football player too when I was a kid. And I was always the start. And spin back or the quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
basically, got to get the ball. And so by the time I went to high school, I actually went out for the first day of football practice thinking I was going out for football as a sophomore. But when I got there and everybody was way bigger than me, the football coach, the assistant football coach, maybe the sophomore coach, Bob Siddons, who was the wrestling coach, told me, he says, well, we're going to need a 95 pounder. And I know that you don't weigh that exactly, but you could probably make that weight. And so we don't want to get you hurt. So I don't know if you should play this sport right now.
Mm.
He was probably right. So he said, I'm going to take you, show up to football practice, show up there, do the warm ups, and then we're going to send you to the wrestling room where there's a few other lighter kids down there that are wrestling right now that you can work out with. And if you're willing to do that, you know, and took me a couple of practices, and I felt that he's giving me good coaching advice, and
Mm.
I became a full-time wrestler as sophomore in high school, even though I wouldn't recommend that to kids that are multi-sport athletes or kids that are bigger. But I wrestled 95 pounds as a
Mm.
sophomore, wrestled 103 as a junior, and 112. But then first lightest weight I ever wrestled pretty much was in college was, again, freshmen weren't eligible, was 130 my freshman year and my sophomore year. Actually, I wrestled 137 at my sophomore year until the end of the year. And my high school coach called me and he said, you think you could make 130? Because West Waterloo has another kid that's at Michigan State that is at 137. And I would like to see two national champs from my high school instead a first and a second or something, because they figured we'd be wrestling each other in the finals. And so I changed right at the end of the season. And that was pretty much the reason why I did it, because my high school coach wanted to have two national champs.
Is
And
that the way it happened?
yeah, we both won. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Dale Anderson. Yeah.
Huh.
So let me think. That year, I had beaten him in an early season tournament, but it went overtime. And in high school, we never even close to. And he was 2 years older than me, and I was a 95 pounder, and he was the 127 pounder. So at that time, I wasn't good enough to go up and wrestle guys much above my weight class, maybe a couple weight classes. Unlike later on, I got better and I could wrestle anybody in any weight class. So.
So before we go on to talk about college, you made mention of your sister, Diane, and that your family had a tragedy. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there's markers in my life. People have markers, and these are kind of markers that you could say that they're not positive. Most of the markers that I'm going to bring up, are points in my life that aren't positive markers, because they're negative things that happen. However, you take those negative things that happen and you turn them around into positive situations for your future. And that's probably the number one negative marker in my life, because I came home and the first thing I did was wanting to tell my parents about a person in my homeroom class that had said something about my sister. So a younger kid, and it wasn't that pretty. So it was like, I think I should share this. But when I got home, like I said, there was action going on between my mom and dad. They're in a little bit of fight, and I kind of shrugged it off, and I forgot about it. I didn't forget about it, but I just felt it wasn't necessary to communicate. So, that was that's probably the thing that's affected me in my life in a negative manner, but turned it into positives, and still do. I mean, I mean, how could you, if you could have prevented something, which I don't know exactly, but if you could have prevented something as a tragedy where somebody rapes and murders your sister, if you could prevent that, and if you could turn that around, and how do you turn things around like that? Well, first of all, you think about who the victim was, and it was a lot of people. But if you think about what she would want for you in your life, what my sister would want for me in my life, and she would want only good things to happen. She would be proud for seeing me win state wrestling championships, seeing me get good grades, um, seeing a family stay together that was going to tear apart. And if you turn those things around, then that's your contribution to her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you can do good things in your life and in your family's life and in the people that are your associate with, I mean, it's happening right now. I mean, I'm not 14 years old when it happened. I'm
Mm-hmm.
75, 76 years old right now. And I'm watching grandkids playing baseball at a high level right now,
Mm-hmm.
at a college level. And I'm seeing them getting good hits, and he's playing hard. He's got the motivation to be professional. And it's not just the oldest, it's the next oldest. It's the next oldest. I got 14 grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
She it still affects my life in a positive way because I want to help other people become who they can be, who they
Mm-hmm.
want to be.
What do
And
you remember about her?
I, you know, I, I don't think it's because she was a girl, but girls didn't have the same opportunities the boys did that they do now, and that's really good that they do have many more opportunities. But she was a supporter of me, just like my mom and dad. I mean, it was like there was her. She was 3 years older, 4 years older, and there was me. But I remember a lot of the attention was given to me, but not just by my mom and my dad, but she was included with that mom and dad. So when they would go to the wrestling matches in junior high, when they would go to the swimming meets at the YMCA, she was always there, that type of thing, uh, and cheering me on, that type of thing. So it wasn't, and I know that she actually was gonna. She went to college. It didn't work out for her so much, so she came back, worked with a family business. By that time, she helped to work with my dad with real estate and that type of stuff. So she was around home a lot, and uh, so and she had a boyfriend, and they were engaged to be married, and she got her life cut out right from beneath her. Just when again, you can remember. I mean, I can remember this because we're getting ready to leave town, and she usually went with us a little bit, but she was 4 years older. She'd already went to college for a year or two, probably a year. Then she came back with the family. But I can remember us getting ready to leave town to go to a cabin in Northeast Iowa. We did not our cabin, but we rented one. And to show you the time and era, the cabin was $4 a night.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's just telling you. So there was a kind of an argument between my mom and my dad at that time whether she should go with us. And she was 19. So it's like one of them stood up for her to stay because she wanted to stay. She didn't want to go with us, and the other was wanting her to come along with us. And again, that's always guilt feelings for them. And I can remember that argument. And then uh, she was supposed to meet us not that day. not that night, but the next day. And so, and little did we know that she was holding out on us a little. She had kind of planned for us to leave, and she was going to have a little party with her friend. Just so happened the neighbor boy, which is in my class, heard the party going on and came by. And after everybody left that night, like probably 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, because she had to get up pretty early. We wanted her there by 11 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock by noon, I think. It's like a 3-hour drive. Everybody left, even her boyfriend, and went home. And this neighbor boy came in and broke into the house, and she didn't give in. She fought him off. She fought to her death. I mean, it wasn't like she didn't. I mean, she could have gave in. I mean, I don't think he was there to kill her, but he ended up killing her because she wasn't gonna give her what he wanted. That's shows a lot right there. But it's I've heard stories a lot in my house after that, which kind of broke me up. I heard my mom and dad arguing about that, and my mom was saying that she wish she would have gave her what he wanted, And that's after beer and alcohol and stuff, drinking late night. And actually, I got tired of hearing that, and I jumped up and I told him, I says, "Listen, this isn't working." And I said, "I'm moving into my sister's room." And this is probably within 6 months after she was murdered. But the hard part was they couldn't get over it, and you can't get over those things, but you got to get on, and you got to use them as lessons, and so on and so forth. So I moved into her room, and it's amazing that I could do that. And it was about an hour after I moved in when they were arguing. I told her in the middle of the night when they were arguing, I went in their room, got in their bed, and went to sleep. I didn't sleep, but they walked in about an hour later and looked at me, and they thought I was sleeping. But I did move in the next day, and they helped me move in there, and it made that house, because we moved back in that same house. I mean, it's pretty crazy, but if you think about it, how a family can move back into that same house where you had your only daughter murdered, and then I moved into her bedroom, and then that kind of calmed things down quite a bit, actually, because that room was off limits. It had been closed, the door, there was nothing really changed about that room. And until I don't know how I got tired of listening, and it was pretty difficult, but it's one of those things that just hits you, and you made a move, and it was the right move. So for the next 2 years in high school, I lived in her bedroom. And then when I came home for college, that was my bedroom, until they, after they left the house, and we sold the house, and just got sold the other day. Actually, it was pretty amazing because it was up for sale from the original. Oh, we were the original owners, not the original, but somebody had lived there for 2 months, got out of it. We bought it, and then after we sold it, they lived there, and then a realtor called us up, and this is just not too long ago, and said, "Your house in Waterloo, Iowa is being sold again, and we just want you to know that in case you want to go back and look at it." And so I went back myself, and a couple of my daughters went back, and we looked at it, and it was pretty much the same exactly as we left it. I mean, the only thing that was different was, I had made a wrestling room out of the basement, and had a workout room in there, down there. Besides that was just empty. But, front room, fireplace, her bedroom, everything was the same, so, In fact, we had we had my dad build a little shed in the backyard, and I went inside that shed just 2 months ago. I mean, it's a long time ago, when I lived there, and we're talking, and I went in there, and there was a picture on the wall in the shed of me in that, and not in the house, but in the shed. Maybe it was the schedule for the Iowa State wrestling team, and I was like the captain or something like that. I can't even remember what it was, but I was like, whoa. So those people that had moved in there had never taken down that. So, it was pretty amazing that, I don't know, that house lives on. And that's where I became I think I moved there when I was in sixth grade.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first time I'd been in it for many years, many, many years. But memories are good and bad, but you take those bad ones, and if you can turn those back into things that have made you a better person and more well known because of doing well for a lot of people, it's just like my 14 grandkids. I mean, come on. It's actually right now, and I didn't have this on the schedule. I got a grandkid right now playing baseball.
Uh-oh.
Gus Davis up in Minnesota, and they were ahead 5-2 when I came on. But I was only watching it on another screen.
Okay.
But I got three kids at college, 3 boys, and they're baseball players. But then the other 11 below that, they're wrestlers. And I got grandkids wrestling right now. I think we're getting ready for the kids state championships in Illinois for 3 of them.
That's great.
2 of them, and then the other was a swimmer. But I tell you, my family life has given me the opportunity to know what family life is. I mean, my mom and dad only got better as they got older.
Mm-hmm.
My dad actually, they both quit drinking the last 20 years of their life. Well, I shouldn't say that. No, they didn't quit drinking, but they quit drinking to excess. They quit smoking the last 20, 30 years of their life, even though they probably had been smoking for 30 years before that, which you just don't do. I mean, people that smoke, probably there's going to be consequences, and if you drink too much, there's going to be consequences. I never smoked except for a few times when I was a kid. Then I was with my buddies, and they said, "Hey, well, you want to drag off this cigarette?" I said, "No." "Oh, you chicken?" "I know." And I took a drag and threw it away or something. But it was no big deal.
Can I ask you a question about Iowa State?
Sure.
How did you decide to go to college there?
Well, there was no decision. I'm an Iowa boy.
Okay.
I canceled my trip to Michigan State. There was reasons why I could have went to Michigan State. I didn't even schedule a visit for Oklahoma State because they're the big wrestling school. But Iowa State had won the Nationals in 1965 for the first time. They had besides the Buzzards on the team, they had a guy named Tom Peckham. And Tom Peckham was the guy that I kind of watched a lot, but I learned a lot. I was taught a lot by the Buzzards. And I had junior high coaches and high school coaches and so on and so forth. But Tom Peckham was from Cresco, Iowa, and Cresco is they were the wrestling little town in Iowa. They probably still are. They got a museum up there for wrestling. And Tom Peckham was a national champ for Iowa State. My first trip to Ames was the national tournament in 1966 after I won my third state championship, and I watched Tom Peckham pin Fred Fozzard in the finals of the national championship in a sold-out crowd of, at that time in that arena, was because I wrestled in that arena for 3 years or more. It's probably, I don't know, 7, 8, 9,000 people. Now they have arenas that have minimum 20,000, but the place went crazy. Tom Peckham his style was kind of like my style, that I was not like super known for this and that and this and that. Well, I should say I was probably known for pinning quite a bit after I really got good at that, but I could wrestle in the top position, the bottom position, and standing. And as you get older, you need to learn more about the standing position. If you want to win the Olympic Games, you got to be pretty darn good on your feet, pretty much. And so it was pretty obvious that if I wanted to be the best wrestler I was going to be, I had to go to the best place in the state of Iowa. I could have went somewhere else like Oklahoma State, but being the homebody I didn't want to go anywhere except UNI.
Mm-hmm.
That's 15 miles away.
Mm.
And the reason why is because it's 15 miles away. I could go home all the time. And it took me, when I went to college as a freshman, it took me from September till probably the 1st of February to get off homesickness. I was homesick, but I went home a lot of times, and it was the transition, not having to wrestle that year full time, helped me too, because I could spend a lot more time with my family. I'm kind of I needed to have my mom a couple times, give me a jolt in my life to make sure that I was growing up and being a man, and growing up and not being such a candy ass. My language. I'm not on the mat, but off the mat, maybe being too much of a guy that just would want to go home and stuff like that. And I had to get on with my life, and probably didn't happen until after the Olympics. I probably didn't really get on. It was a good time to move on, even though I'd already been a college graduate and was in graduate school, and that's when I met my pretty much first real girlfriend, which became my wife, Kathy. It was after the Olympics, so I was pretty focused guy.
So you had 4 good years at Iowa State, and were you wrestling freestyle at that point as well, or no?
I started freestyle my freshman year in college.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the first time ever. But when you say I had 4 good years, well, yeah, I was only eligible for 3, so that's my sophomore, junior. But I had a good freshman year, yes. But did I have a good senior year after winning? I was 181-0 going into my national finals.
I know.
So I probably had, minus 64 of those were in high school. But was that a good year? I mean, losing your last match after that 7 years of wrestling. Now, most people say it wasn't a good year, and I would be probably the same thing, and I'd probably be bitter for a little bit. But when I analyzed that match made my career. That made my career up to that point in time, and it allowed me to go back and understand what took place in my life, why that match got beat, why I lost that match. I mean, people can just move on to the next. You strike out in baseball and you say, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to go on, I'll hit the next ball. Well, you know what? You got to figure out why sometimes you struck out.
What was it?
Well, I can't tell you in baseball why I struck out.
No. What was the Larry Owings match?
See, I'm dealing with baseball now a little bit, quite a bit.
All right.
And they say, I'll just move on. That was freakish. Was this freakish, or was there a reason why? There was a lot of reasons why. And let me tell you another thing. There's a lot of reasons why that helped me for my profession of wrestling. Because my profession of wrestling was going to be wrestling ever since I started wrestling, because once I became full-time, probably my sophomore year in high school. for full time. So that was going to be. So
When I watched that
why?
match,
Because look at me right now. What am I doing? I'm talking to you.
mm-hmm,
You're interviewing me. Should I
mm-hmm,
be doing this before I'm wrestling in a match? Should I be, people, sometimes people have it worked out where you can maybe step off after the match and you get a line or two. But most of the time, you don't want to spend a lot of time on focusing on other things except your performance. And when your performance is done, go ahead and give them what you have to say.
mm-hmm.
But I was interviewing, I was interviewing from second one of this tournament to right before my match.
Mm.
And that wasn't me. No excuses, because this guy was ready. And who would think that somebody's going to beat somebody that's undefeated for 7 years in a row? 181-0. Well, Larry Owens was there to beat me. And he even said so, and it was the headlines in the Chicago Tribune that I'm here to beat Dan Gable. And holy cow, that caught my eye, And I shouldn't have. I should have thrown the newspaper away. And I did read the thing, and I shouldn't even have read it. I should have said, "Oh, I'm going to get on. This is challenging. I got to be ready." Instead, I was on your podcast. I wasn't. But what I'm
Do
saying,
you
I
have
was
a
on
match
Wide World
later
of Sport.
today?
I was on Wide World of Sport
Oh my
every
gosh!
after every match and all this kind of stuff, and which is good for the sport. But it really taught me a lot about my profession and coaching, and about my performance, that if you're not ready, you can be, because you know what, from second one in that match, I didn't feel good. And I never even knew how I felt in any of the other matches I wrestled. In 181 matches, blew the whistle, wrestled hard until they blew the whistle until it stopped. Well, this time when they blew the whistle and we got in this flurry right away, I said, wow, I feel tired. I can remember saying that.
Mm.
I'm thinking, what am I thinking about being tired? I'm in a national finals, got one match to go. I should be just focusing on wrestling hard, smart. I don't care if I'm tired. I should know it, because a lot of times I came off the mat when I was pinning a guy or winning a tough match, which usually wasn't close. But I would come off and say, wow, I'm tired. But I was after the match, and at
Mm-hmm.
a time where I can think about being tired, not during the match. Well, I knew I was tired in the first period of the match against Larry Owens, but I kept talking myself into going and moving. You can do it. You can do it. You can get this takedown. Now, fight. Don't. So I was coaching myself during the match, and I had coached, and then I got ahead, then I got behind quite a ways, and then I got ahead right in the end, and then I had some calls that could have went either way, So I still could have won the match, but I don't. I had to lose that match for me to be able to go beyond, get a lot better, become a great coach, become a great Olympic wrestler. I needed to lose that match and understand the things that you got to focus on and stay focused in your matches or in your competition, in your profession. And so that match made me. Markers in my life, my sister, markers in my life, smaller markers. Yeah, I got smaller markers, like YMCA, my family, my mom and dad and stuff like that. But the markers in my life have been, my sister and then Larry Owens loss. That really uh, made me analyze. I went back 365 days from the Larry Owens loss and had a calendar and mapped it out. And since then, every year in coaching, I mapped out everything I did every day for 365 days. So if things didn't work out, I could go back and see where the mistakes were being made, if there were mistakes being made. And I made some mistakes. Yes, absolutely. I made some mistakes, especially in coaching. I had 9 straight national titles. All I got to have is one more, and it's like the record performance. But I got a little cocky. I just thought it would automatically happen, and there you go again. I should have learned from the Owens loss. Every once in a while, you got to get kicked in the butt. I mean, the same way with marriage. I'm in marriage for 50 years. You think it's going to make 60 years? Hell no, it's not going to make it if I don't make sure I know what I'm doing.
Mm.
It's just you don't let up because you think it's automatically going to happen. You got to work at things every day if you want to make good accomplishments.
Mm.
Bottom line is, I like good accomplishments. I've had too many things in my life that has been good to go in the wrong direction. And
Mm.
so that prevention word is so important for me. I don't want to prevent any more losses in my life. I really don't. Uh, and if I can, I will. I mean, and what could be losses? Well, anything that is of
Mm.
importance in your life.
It's a metaphor, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like the way you're speaking, it's
Yeah.
don't take anything for granted.
No, unless, well, you can take it, but then you're just gonna have
Pay the
flip
price.
a coin. You like flipping a coin to see who wins? 50-50? No, I don't like that. I like a one-sided coin
Hmm.
that's on both sides. If it's going to come up heads, get your choice.
I have a
Winning
question.
and losing, and you got winning on both sides. Flip it up, it flips down, and it says winning.
I have a question about the room. I think about the Penn State, the way that room has evolved, and when I was younger, like I'm the same age as Terry and Troy Steiner,
Mm.
roughly. They're a little younger than I am, but like when I was a kid, we would, watch your teams, and my coach would always talk about you and whatnot. But when I talked to Terry Steiner, like, and he was describing how he was fighting for his position on the team his sophomore year, I believe. And the guy that he had to wrestle off was a national champ or was ranked number one. And he had to wrestle that guy for the weight class. And I talked to him about you, and I said, how did Coach Gable navigate that? Like, because he says you cared about him and he could sense that you cared about him. And I said, but you have 2 or 3 deep in every weight class. Like, how does he care about everyone and keep the harmony? And I just wondered how you did it. Like, how does a great coach like yourself make everyone feel that you care about them, that you love them, and that you'll be fair?
Well, I don't know if I've always been fair,
Mhm.
but the parents, and you try to be fair. But when it comes right down to it, the ones that are in the difficult positions that aren't the number one guys, they have to be on board too. Because if they're not on board, then you're having some ways in your room that aren't going the same direction. They can't be happy about being in second, as a backup, but they know that. So here's what you do: you got 30 kids on the team, and you have to go and you take the number one kid on your team, and then you put his name. Then you take number two and you put his name, and you get all the way down to number 30 and you put his name. They're all relevant, all of them. But you tell that number 30 guy that he is no more less important than the number one guy. However, you don't want to stay at number 30. You want to work your way up to number 29. And then when you work your way up to 29, you want to work your way up to 28. And so everybody's relevant, but everybody's working their way up the ladder. And so it's a constant relevancy because everybody's important. But you don't want to be in the last position and even because you only got 10 weight classes. So you want to at least be up to make that top 10 so you can be on the team.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't work either sometimes because there might be some guys that's the same weight that's in the top 10 and that type of thing. So, it's something that you have to go out of your way as a person and spend time with those people, even
Mm-hmm.
though they're number 30. or 29 or 28 or 27. Because they're getting probably a lot of attention already, number 1 through 10. They're probably getting press. They're getting pats on the back. They're probably getting more girlfriends. They're, whatever. But it's one of these things that you as a coach have to realize. So, I mean, just last night, I was watching a baseball game and I had a guy call me that was on my team back in the middle 80s. And he has become an unbelievable guy in business at the top of his game and has done very well. And he searched me out and we went to the baseball game, the college baseball game last night. We met each other and we sat there and talked for 2 hours. His name is Paul Glenn. And what's unbelievable about him, he was our number 1 guy until the week of the Big Tens one year. And we had a tryout. He was rated number 3 in the country. And this other guy was a sophomore. And I made him try out. They went 2 out of 3 and Glenn didn't win. But the other guy happened to win the outstanding wrestler in the Big Tens that year. And he hadn't wrestled much that year. He wasn't
Who was that?
First semester. His name's Brad Penrith.
Oh, wow. He's from New York. I remember him.
Yeah, Brad Penrith from Windsor, New York, I think. Or something there. But so Brad Penrith, had issues in himself. And so that's another whole story. And that's a whole podcast and a whole world story. But Paul Glenn had been the starter most of the year. And all of a sudden he gets knocked off the team. And he didn't really get a chance to go to the Big Tens ever, even though he was number 3rd ranked in the country. And it just so happens when he lost those 2 out of 3 tryouts, he could have been my worst enemy the rest of my life. But instead, he had his 4 years, his 5 years. He picked up things. And when we were talking about 1 to 30 kids on the team, he might have been number 30, but he wasn't at that time. But you gotta affect everybody, get everybody on board. And so when we sat and talked for 2 hours last night, we had the best of time talking about things. He remembers things much clearer that are his own unique situations, and he doesn't hold any grudges. I mean, this was going into the Big Tens, and he had been the starter the whole year, except for a few matches where I let Penrith alternate, just because I knew his potential. And he could be mad at me for, but he didn't. He didn't get mad at me. He took that tryout loss and he's instilled it as a positive, not a positive, but a way of making his life go to a high level. I mean, he's CEO of probably a company and doing really well, and he still likes me. He still likes me. That's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing.
Sounds like he valued what you did for him, and he sounds like a super well-adjusted person. Even if he was upset originally, he let it go.
Well, we got people like that, but then we got other people that really still like me, but still have not really moved on to a whole lot places in their life as far as like being a CEO of a company or being, but they did well in wrestling, and they've actually done pretty well, but they're doing what they want to do. And I'm not going to, I want to give them direction, and I want them to go in good directions. And even if they're not in them good directions, they at least got to think that this is what they want. I'm not talking about people that are doing bad things.
Right.
I'm not talking about robbers or people that are killing people, but I'm talking about people that want to live the way they want to live. And,
but it sounds like it hurts you if people hold on to negative things and let them weigh them
Good
down.
example. So a few years ago, I was in the weight room at Iowa, wrestling weight room, and I wasn't even the coach at that time, but I might have been administration a little bit, or I might have been out. I might have just been back to watch a practice, and one of the kids that was on the team back and then, and I'm watching him, but he wasn't on the team then. He came back from his job or whatever he was doing, but he was just watching too, but he was working out, and I started talking to him, and he was mad at me. He was mad at me. I mean, it'd been 10 years maybe. He had walked away, and I didn't know it. So that's what upset me. And here's a kid that was mad at me because he thought I maybe didn't give him the best opportunity to be on the team at the time. Or maybe I said, there's no tryout, or maybe he wanted to try out, and I still didn't put him on the team. There's decisions you make in life that you got to live with, and hope that they're for the best, but they might not turn out that way. And if you're doing good things, and and you really are on top of them, most of those decisions are going to be good, no matter, even if this guy lost the tryout and you put the other guy in.
Mm-hmm.
And if it turns out good. If it doesn't turn out good, then you're going to have somebody that's mad at you. But again, you can still straighten it out. And I think in that little brief moment when I realized this kid's been mad at me for 10 years, right now is my opportunity to straighten this out.
Amen.
And within 5 or 10 minutes before he left, I think it was better.
Mm.
I don't think it's not going to haunt him, because nothing needs to haunt you. You need to move on.
He just wanted to know that you cared about him.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you said that, because that's what I hope, because that's what I do. And I do care about him. And I can tell you who he is, but I'm not going to.
No, that's okay.
It's just like all your kids. I mean, I got kids right now that are struggling in some ways a little bit, and that bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I struggle. But you know what? I have people looking out for me too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, besides family, I got this guy named Ben Peterson, champion. Didn't know he could be an Olympic champion till we met Dan Gable.
Him and his brother both.
Yeah, John Peterson. But, it's like if you go to my cell phone right now, and you look up on my cell phone, and you go to Ben Peterson, all it is sermons. He gives me a sermon 3 times a week. He's a minister. Him and his brother deal with athletes in action. I'm still getting help. And most of the things that he references to is in the Bible, but he's changing it a little bit for wrestling's purposes and applying it that way. And I understand it better. But it seems like every time I'm struggling a little bit, I've never even asked him, but he's hitting the right points. So I'm still getting guidance. Amen. And you never stop wanting to get good guidance. And so it's just amazing.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I'm a non-drinker. I was no good at it. And so I go to AA meetings. And in AA one time, I heard a guy say, my affliction is not alcohol. My affliction is the human condition. And the human condition is not curable, but it is treatable. So I feel like nobody is immune from these things. Everyone is subject to the human condition. And to get reminders from someone like Ben it's a lifesaver.
Right. I mean, I'm dealing with one of my grandkids, and I just sent him all the sermons that he has been giving me in the last week, which was probably about 3 pages of sermons, but it's amazing. And so, yeah, you're a non-drinker, but I got a beer out named Gable in Iowa, and it's going into Illinois, and it's going to Nebraska, and there's a brewery in my hometown of Waterloo of course, the owner is a former wrestler, Dave Morgan, and
Mm-hmm.
so he made up a Gable beer. And I don't want people to drink a ton of it because you'll never like it again. Because if you drink too much, you get sick. If it's okay to drink a beer or two or whatever it is, and it uh, gives money to a museum in my hometown. I mean, they've given them well over $100,000, and the beer's only been out 4 years. But
Wow.
it's only in Iowa now. But it's like, should I really have a beer? Is it if you abuse it? No. If you're illegal to drink a beer or two, because I've had a beer limit on my life because I would never be married for 50 years. I would have never been able to do what I was accomplished if I didn't start pretty early with a limit. And I had a
Mm.
2 beer limit for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. I think it's down to about one now, but and again, it's probably now it's probably down to about one a week, but that's not good for sales, But I really don't have to buy it, but but is that it's a pretty good honor when you live your life and you have a museum that's named after you in your
No doubt.
you know but it's a museum that actually Stillwater, Oklahoma owns, uh, the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, and this is the Dan Gable National Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
You got to live a pretty good life to be able to. I mean, you can't drink a lot of beer to be honest with you if you're gonna get your names up on headlines and keep it in good headlines.
Amen. You've touched so many people. I mean, just the people, our friends in common, like I said, Terry Steiner being the most notable.
Well, the Steiners, come on, they, I mean, I'm winning, then I'm all of a sudden not winning, but you're taking second or third, and then you go recruit two sets of twins, the Brands twins and the Steiner twins, and you got
Mm-hmm.
4 guys out of the 10 weight classes that are just super dedicated to the sport.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and it's like it's double impact. It's
Mm-hmm.
like I've always in my career recruited brothers and twins
The
and
Bannocks.
local kids.
Mm-hmm.
You need that. You got an automatic audience if you just recruit good, tough local kids,
Mm-hmm.
because they only have to get in their car and drive 2 miles to the stadium or wherever you're at.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, I think that you really should focus on, if you want to build a program, you build a lot of things up, and you need people. Well, the people are right around you, but
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to be interested in if you don't have some of the other local people, or you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to be interested if you don't do them pretty good. So you got to
Mm-hmm.
work at doing good too, and that all takes work, a lot of work, a lot of planning. And when things don't work so well, you go back, you cross it off, and you go another direction, but you figure out a better direction. Always a
Mm-hmm.
better direction.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, don't You got to be open minded a little bit. But what works for you, you got to keep doing too.
Mm-hmm.
For you, if it works well. I mean, that's why Penn State. I mean, come on, they got it. I mean, nobody's too close
Mm-hmm.
so far. But this would be the year. This would be the year. If you beat Penn State this year, nobody's going to ever forget it.
Yeah.
Nobody. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to ever forget my retirement year at
Mm-hmm.
UNI.
Mm-hmm.
We were number 2 going into that event,
Mm-hmm.
and because we dominated so much and right in my home area. Well, this year with Penn State going into the season 100 points ahead of everybody, and they're still about 60, 70 points ahead of everybody. I mean, that's a lot of points to make up. But all I'm saying, it's that's for motivation.
Mm-hmm.
What makes you get up in the morning. That's what makes you go to work all day. That's what makes you got to have things in your eyesight, in vision, that are really, truly reality,
Mm-hmm.
not imagination to the point where it's impossible. And so some people say, well, okay, it's impossible. I don't think anything's impossible, but it's difficult.
Mm.
Day after day, you shave a point closer or whatever you do. And that's what exciting. Records are meant to be broken.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I love making the records, I like doing
Mm-hmm.
the records and the team, but they're still meant to be broken.
Mm-hmm.
That's where attitude comes in. That's where attitude comes
So I've asked you a lot of questions. Do you have any questions for me or comments
in. Yeah, tell
today?
me a little bit about yourself, because I'd like to know a little bit about yourself. I mean, obviously, you know the Steiners. Where are you from
I live in upstate New York,
right now?
near Albany, New York area.
I love Albany. I'm going there not too in about September. But
Yeah, you're going to do a speech at my office.
oh, I am.
Yeah,
Oh,
with Frank Papalizio.
okay.
And
No, I know Frank, but I didn't know I was doing it at your office.
well, it's my boss, Alex Stronco.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, it's going to
Well,
be
that's
great.
amazing.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Alex is Frank's brother-in-law.
yeah, I knew that. Oh, and
So
I
we're
didn't know
looking
the connection.
forward to having you.
I didn't know the connection, but I don't know where I was going with that. But
Well, you
anyway,
asked me a question. So I
oh,
grew up
you're
in the
okay.
area.
Yeah, wow, no
I was
wonder.
a high school
I'm
wrestler,
glad.
and I'm a
Yeah,
huge wrestling fan. I sponsor in the program every year, a couple ads, and I'm just a big fan of the sport. And I support Ohio State a little bit, and I support the Penn Regional Training Center, Brandon Slay and his group. And I'm a huge Joey McKenna fan, if you know who Joey is.
listen, every person you named, I know a lot about.
I bet.
Even though I have been a wrestling coach for a long time, you know, Joey McKenna, I mean, he works with ASICs. I've been with ASICs since 1977.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's a good wrestler, great wrestler, but it's these people that we're connected, and
Amen.
and we don't you don't want to fall asleep and wake up and not know anything. So
So I'm looking forward to seeing you. I hope in a couple of weeks. I assume you'll be at the tournament in
I am
Columbus.
coming in on Wednesday night. I'm
Okay,
staying Thursday, doing some stuff for ASICs and doing some other things for hopefully meeting a couple people that help support the museum in Waterloo, Iowa. And I'll watch the Hawkeyes and everybody else. But then I have to be early morning flight home on Friday because
okay,
my grandkids are playing probably against Michigan State or Michigan baseball,
got it.
the Big Ten. And, I gotta families first.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a highlight of my life to talk with you. Thank you so much for spending the time. Um, but before we wrap up, I'm in the habit of talking about the hyphen. The hyphen is the most important punctuation in the English language, in my opinion. Do you know
Hype,
why?
the hype,
Yeah,
this thing.
yeah.
Whoa.
Do you know
You
why?
gotta tell me. No, you gotta tell me.
Because it's what's between your date of birth and your date of death.
Wow.
So if I didn't know anything about you and I was being told about you 50 years from now, what would you want me to know about you? Just in a few sentences, what did Dan Gable stand for?
I'm sorry, but you're gonna know about me because that's my goal.
Mm-hmm.
My goal is to touch everybody in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
And so in 50 years from now, my goal would be that everybody knows me, even though I got a hyphen in there.
That's a great finish.
So I don't have to worry about it because I'm always worried about wrestling. So I won't have to worry about wrestling because we're getting touched there. If you know Dan Gable, you'll know the sport of wrestling.
Amen.
And uh, and then you can also shoot off that and you can say, well, pretty good family guy. You can also
Mm-hmm.
shoot off that and whatever area you're in. And what do you call your area?
My area?
Yeah.
Professionally?
Yeah.
I'm trained as a financial planner.
Okay. Well, you're that, but then you're the most fascinating podcast, right?
I am.
So if we can get if we get this podcast to be forever known and
Hmm.
remembered, that's probably a good thing for you too.
No doubt.
Yeah.
But I just want you to know it was a highlight of my life to talk with you. Thank you so much. And I think you're an American treasure.
Well, I'm working on it. I can tell you that. I know there's some people that don't like me, but that's because I probably have beat them on the mat or I'm ahead of them somewhere else. But I'm just wanting them to catch up. So
Amen.
yeah,
That's a small minority.
yeah. Thank you.
But thank you for your time and have a great afternoon, Dan.
All right, I will. Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir.
Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you enjoy the most fascinating podcast in the world, please follow on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, and follow on Apple Podcast.